Hello, everybody. Here we are, Smiles Rant number 11. Final changes, age 99. Just for you guys, I zoomed in a little bit. Yeah, talked about production value. Bigger letters. Yeah, pretty sweet. Tell your friends. We have age 99 final changes. We have end date is February 4th. Leaves us about a 74, 75 day age, very similar to age 98, a little bit longer than the average, which has usually been around 70 days, sometimes a little lower. So an extra few days makes things that scale a little bit more. So an extra 3 days of a high science sage or war hero, whatever you got. General mechanics, ambush attacks, increase kills 15%. As well as many attacking elites have a lower defense. So I think we're going to finally see Ambush back in the fray. Nice change. Keep an eye out on it. You might actually be able to land ambushes on many people as a sort of low offense hybrid. So you might even want as like a pure TM just to slip in that like 2 to 4 EPA or O specs per acre. Get in those ambushes. Peasant kills on Massacre are reduced 30%. This effectively undoes the 50% increase from age 94. So, depending on the kingdom you were in for the last 5 ages, you've been massacred a lot or done a lot of massacres. It's just sort of been meta. I think that's going to be less the case now. But of course, it's still really good at killing thieves. And it's okay at killing wizards. It's mostly good at killing thieves. Losing kingdoms gain some science. The honor change that never happened last age is confirmed not happening. Out of range wars won't give war score. They'll probably still modify your average opponent size and how that relates to your war score. Not 100% on that, but very likely. It just means that when Emeriti or whoever is beating people at max meter at 70%, they're not also getting a bunch of war win points for it. And vice versa when, Swea withdraws after 16 ticks so they can keep exploring after you max meter, you're not magically getting 80 points for it. So, things that should have already been the case. So that's nice. Players can cancel their mentor, bit of quality of life there. So, looks like most of the things we expected to see came through in general mechanics, so that's nice. No big vetoes or anything for final changes. Meteor Showers are now available in hostile again, but not unfriendly. I think that's a nice sort of middle ground that you can still play meter a bit, but just because you hit someone one too many times, your whole kingdom doesn't get Meteor Showers anymore. A little bit more leeway for playing meter without giving button and without giving Meteor Showers. So I think that's a nice change. I think most people think that's ideal. Some people don't want Meteor Showers. Some people wish they could cast it more. Those people won't be as happy. Mind Focus is better. Mind Focus is only on Dark Elf, I believe. So it's just, 35% more wizard generation for Dark Elf. Mystic Vortex cost will be reduced. I believe that's only the rune cost. I would have loved to see it have a mana cost down to 2% intra, because intras cost 3%, even if you're in war where everything else is costing 2%. Really annoys me, but yeah, at least it's something. Support spells. This is probably the biggest change so far. No more Illuminate Shadows or Divine Shield from your Paladin. So that's your rogues no longer getting Divine Shield, your casters no longer getting Illuminate Shadows, your Night Strike targets no longer getting Illuminate Shadows, your rogues no longer getting Illuminate Shadows. So I think it's more a nerf to TM's defense than anything, but it also affects core quite a bit. It's just that your entire core didn't used to have these, whereas very often you would sweep these on your entire TMs. Salvation was sort of a new thing anyways, so not a lot to talk about there. Town Watch, I think that was a bad thing to have on support casting anyways, so this was also contributing to how much people were getting massacred, I'd think. The only racial spell on the entire support list right now is Mist, so the only fancy Paladin this age is Dwarf. Every other Paladin is the same as every other Paladin when it comes to spells. So there you go. And let's get into the races. We've got Avian. Compared to last age, we've got the exact same elite. It's only a little bit more expensive, so very affordable elite. Low net worth elite. Same offense, a little less defense. Going to be a little bit easier to hit these guys' armies in, a little bit easier to ambush them. No longer a 5% BE penalty, so you're gaining 5% build efficiency, 5% birth rate, 5% attack speed. Not bad overall. This ambush protection refers to land lost only, not troops, so it's still very viable to kill Avian offense by ambushing them. You're just not taking any of their land. They still have access to fanaticism, but I do believe Paladin base has fanaticism now, so now you are no longer required to run Avian clerics to get that benefit. So, just several very small buffs to Avian, but no offense increase, and we'll see a fair offense increase across the board on other races. So Avian maintains that good against core, not breaking TMs, not breaking turtle sort of thing. So I think very strong. It fills its role very well. You can't really compete with this sort of attack speed and build space that you get. So if you run Avians, you're going to beat pretty much every other core, but you need another method to break enemy TMs, whether you mix in some other core, your TMs are built to break TMs, or you think that you can just blitz through enough provinces at min time that they're just going to leave, even if you don't have that solution. So, yeah, A+ for Avian. Dark Elf. Dark Elf has quite a big change. No longer having that defensive elite with the big O spec, now they have an offensive elite. So Dark Elf is much more reliant on pumping elites now. So they're a lot slower to get online than before. They've got a lot of elites that they need. They're quite expensive. So the Mind Focus is going to help in that way. You can get away with less guilds, get that into banks, and push those elite costs. No longer having the birth rate penalty, I think, is a big bonus. As an attacker-focused race, birth rate penalty is really painful, especially once you get past min-time wars, where birth rates are starting to come into play a lot more. You know, the first day or two of wars, you're as likely to be overpopped as not, so it doesn't really matter. Thief cost, I don't think is much of a penalty. So, cheap runes. You know, that's really good in war. Whether you have a couple Dark Elf and you're just getting maximum efficiency out of them, or you have a big wall of Dark Elf just blitzing them with a lot of spells. It's a very strong bonus. And their offense potential is pretty high, right? Like, that's a 15 elite with a lot of defense on there if you need to turtle a bit. This is more offense than an Avian. This is as much offense as, you know, humans and dwarves were getting last age. So, you know, a very strong attacker. They're no longer bleeding offense to converts, but they're not as defensive. They need a lot more prep time to get those offense numbers in. And they're really relying on that sort of magic-focused winner. The other bonus they have here, 25% training ground land effects. This will be nice, I think, with Warrior. You can get those combined TGs in. Yeah, they're pretty focused into being an attacker mage. Most likely you want to run, if you want a few of these, you run those Heretics and you get that Nightmare in... If it's just Fireball you're casting, you know, Fireball's not that expensive. So you want to be casting expensive spells like Tornadoes, Amnesia. Well, you can't Amnesia with them this age. Tornadoes, Meteor Showers, Nightmare, things like that. Abolish Ritual is really nice. You can just put one Dark Elf in your kingdom and use it to abolish every ritual. Pretty efficient. It's nice. It saves you a lot of towers where it matters. Especially strong early age, where runes are an issue. So, yeah, Dark Elf has potential. The problem is that it's not really good at anything, right? It's not fast, it doesn't do extra damage, it doesn't have especially high offense or defense or anything like that. It's 100% reliant on you utilizing the spell rune cost in a way that is effective. So, Dark Elf, I'll give it a DE+. Dwarf. Got almost an identical dwarf, I believe. No. Dwarf doesn't have mist. Okay, I was mistaken at the start here. Only Dryad has mist. Okay, I totally missed that. So you actually need Dryad. I thought they kept mist this age. So they do lose that innate tankiness a little bit, but they gain instead Illuminate Shadows, which is going to amplify Dwarves' natural ability to withstand thieves. The biggest thing to stop thieves is high building efficiency watchtowers, which dwarves can get, and the ability to rebuild them if they do get targeted, which dwarves have. So, otherwise, very similar dwarf, exact same bonuses, essentially the same penalties. They still have that little bit of extra money and something to make them tankier. They've got a really high defense elite. The only really change to Dwarf is they've got one extra little bit of offense, and the elite net worth is a big one there. Huge decrease here. So, a big problem people have with dwarves is you have some dwarves, they've got a lot of elites, and it inflates their net worth so much that they're sort of forced to war people that are just stronger than them because of net worth efficiency. But now with a lower net worth elite that's sort of on par with everyone else, you're not just innately behind based on net worth. Now you're actually sort of warring more based on your land rather than your net worth. So I think that's a really big bonus that's sort of hidden for Dwarf, and nobody's going to complain about offense. Also, in an age where elites across the board are getting more expensive, Dwarf is going to have less issues because they've got, you know, cheap rebuilds, they've got better banks, they've got more income. They're just going to be fine. They can max out their armories really easily. So they'll have no problem getting the elites they want, and the elites are stronger now. So Dwarf's in a nice spot. They're still in that medium offense role that's highly adaptable and highly defensive. So you can use them pretty much as any personality, I think. There's nothing really limiting you. If you want to push offense, if you want to have a sort of hybrid feel, you want a more economic focus, they're all good options. I give them a D+. Dryad. Little bit of food, little bit of runes. This works out to about 5% farms, 5% towers. By mid to late age, you probably need 0 farms and, you know, only a few towers to really maintain yourself. These things do both rely on your production science and your building efficiency. Just a heads up. Training time doesn't matter that much. It does give you a little bit more economy in End of War Ceasefire. If you just turn this into training 2 or 3 days late, and you look at 2 or 3 ticks on the scope of an End of War Ceasefire, you know, that's like 5% economy across the whole thing. It's not so bad. You know, if you train 2 or 3 ticks later, you draft 2 or 3 ticks later, it means you're making more money for 2 or 3 ticks. So what do they have here? Anti-chain spell, anti-chain spell. no O-spec, no D-spec, no horse, just one big-ass elite. High net worth elite as well, so even if they do get that EPA count mid to late age, they're also going to be really high in net worth. You're going to be able to chain them very, very deep, because once their armies are out, so much of that net worth is tied into elites, you're going to be able to chain them to like 200 acres, no problem. Having really synced waves is going to be strong for chaining dryads. They're slow, they have high army out net worth. You want to chain them as fast as possible so that they don't lose net worth as they desert. So you can chain them even lower. Dryad, spoiler alert, is insane. But if you can't max out those elites, who gives a crap? So you were looking at needing at least 50% elites to even, come across as like anything better than base. But once you're looking at 80 to 100% elite count, dryads are going to be insane. It's a lot of offense, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, folks, guys and gals. Lot of offense. Now, how are you going to get those elites? I don't know. Try not to be in prolonged wars. If you have a really long war, everyone's going to leave with 2 EPA. So if you're losing a war, withdraw early. Maintain your elites. Try to win really fast when you can to maintain those elites. Make sure every end of war ceasefire you're releasing your specs, you're building 30% banks, you've got a decent pool of alchemy science, build efficiency science, you max your armories, you train as many elites as you can, you fill out your thieves and your specs later unless you have an immediate war lined up. These are the methods you take to build a lot of elites. And once they're there, Dryad is going to run a lot of guard stations, a lot of watchtowers, and they're just going to hit you. And there's going to be nothing you can do to stop them hitting you, so be worried about it. Once their elite count is high enough, they're going to start dropping stables for other buildings. It's a whole thing. I think naturally Dryad wants to be a tactician. You can basically negate the penalty, you have a fine attack time, and the extra general combined with this actual high elite is really good. It's all really nice. I think Dryad is going to be a monster. The issue some people will have is you pump up a bunch of Dryads and everyone just dodges you because who wants to war a bunch of Dryads? You did it. You won. You got the elites on your Dryad. Now no one wants to war you. Maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. But between these spells, this elite, that's all it needs. It's really strong. Being slow, no barracks, it's sort of an issue. It's really not a big deal. Like I said, Tactician's going to really help this, but you could still go Warrior. I wouldn't go Raider with them, but Warrior's really strong. If you go something with an economic bonus, you can leverage those elites earlier, so an Artisan, even a Sage could do really well. Paladin keeps those elites alive better, as well as has that economic bonus. Who can say? So, Dryad's great. I give it a D+ for Dryad. Elf. Elf is hilarious. Each guild generates 6 runes. Each guild is as good as half of a tower. If you're Mystic, I do have it confirmed, this will be equal to towers. So your in-war elf mystics are going to be running 20-30% guilds, and it's hilarious because if your war goes on and on, your elf is gaining wizards. Very suspicious. Very, very suspicious. This can be an issue. You start war at 5 WPA, war goes on a week, suddenly you're 8 WPA, and you're taking out all the enemy TMs. So it's sort of a weird, like, super unbreakable, long-term war bonus that might matter. Sort of niche, though. I don't think that's actually a huge thing. What it really is 10% free land in war. Because once you have max guilds for casting, the additional guilds aren't actually helping you that much. So, oh well. But hey, 10 to 20 free land in war, no big deal. Pretty nice. 20% spell duration, that's self spells and offensive spells. That's very helpful as well. You're recasting your spells less often, you have more offensive mana. You don't have to re-up those Meteor Showers, those Greeds, those Chastities as often, your Blizzards. The built-in Illuminate Shadows is extremely strong for protecting your wizards. It's really hard to Greater Arson a bunch of watchtowers, etc. They don't really have any penalties. The 12D spec is a lot of defense, and you get it for free. In an age of really expensive elites, this is a big, big bonus. They have a super expensive elite, but no one's ever going to train that many of them. So it's basically just a wall of D-specs. They've got all the spells. They have a lot of power. Not really. Their only bonus is their ability to pump faster with D-spec-based defense and Mage's Fury. So their offensive output is going to be higher than Fairy, but they do risk that, honor bleed from just getting fireballed, from getting meteor showered, stuff like that. It's going to be not that hard to toss a meteor shower onto an elf. But a lot of utility with Blizzard. If you want that Wall of Chastity, this is how you get it. Magic Ward is a spell that exists, and I'm sure has an effect when you cast it on people. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe you know. But yeah, this is just the easiest thing to play in the world. You could play it as any TM because it has defense, and it's easy to pump, and it's got utility. It doesn't have any drawbacks. And you can throw on some elites, and it's not so bad because you have so much defense. You can attack early and get free elites and make it even easier to pump. Are you going to run this as a non-TM? Probably not. You're not getting the offense you need. If you run it as something like a Paladin, you can have a really turtley province that has a modest offense, and you can just use it to kill dragons. I've done it before. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's really strong. It's a lot of defense. It's really easy to pump the defense. There's no drawback. Like, it's hard to say to anyone, no, don't play elf. But it does lack that power you like to see. This is efficiency, this is output, but it's not power. This is power, but it comes at a price, so. Don't know about the Mage's Fury. Don't know about having no innate benefits other than that, but this is going to come online very early. It's going to scale all age. Maybe at the very end of age, you're going to be a little bit weaker than Fairy, but you just hope that a lot of Fairy out there have a hard time and that you're doing better than them because you didn't get chained and stuff like that. So, very normal elf. Very boring elf. I think it's fine. The military's not so bad. If you just cut D-specs and add more offense, they also come out fine in that regard, so yeah, it's alright. But compare that to our beautiful, beautiful fairies. Plus 15% magic effectiveness, plus 10% TPA, access to amnesia, ghost workers, gluttony. Don't really care about the gluttony. Ghost workers is like 5% BE, no one's sad about that. Amnesia is an incredibly powerful late age spell. They have a 13 defense elite. That's big boy numbers. The strongest TM of any age is usually the TM with the most defense. That's just how the game works, and this elite has the most defense. It's got a pretty pricey 1900 gold tag on it, but certainly achievable. You're constantly building elites in war. every war you're ending end war ceasefire usually with more elites than the last one, so this is scaling all age long. If you have a big period of downtime after a war, you can focus that end of war ceasefire on pushing pure elite and then fill out those other things afterwards when you're sitting out of war. They do have this drawback here with a -1 O-spec strength. So early age, they're not putting out quite the same sort of hybrid offense numbers as before, but, you know, it balances out with the elite. You're going to have pretty much equivalent military numbers in that hybrid stage. It's just that once you get to the pure elite stage of the age, you have a lot more defense. And when you compare it to last age, there's a 20% swing in TPA from -10% to +10%. So pretty happy about that. Now their penalty, -5 homes capacity. This is effectively for every 10% homes you have, it's -2% population. So, you know, a pretty standard fairy might run 25% homes in the mid to late age, effectively -5% population, which is a nerf we've seen many times on fairy, so people are sort of know what to expect. And there are ways around it, right? You can just run less homes and have less penalty. You fill in extra buildings. It's sort of a balance of building efficiency and population. Just sort of, you have to change how you're balancing your economy just a little bit. And, you know, in the later age, you can just start sort of replacing your homes with libraries, and things work out pretty well. So, not a huge penalty, but not nothing. Overall, I think Fairy is by far your scaling TM. It's just going to take a lot of love. If you're not a Mystic, you've got to worry about pumping Wizards and pumping Elites and keeping up on Science, and those are all very hard to do together. But the fact that you can run it as a hybrid early on and then scale at the right timing into those Elites make it a pretty easy path through the age. Unless, of course, you get the shit beat out of you. If you get the shit beat out of you, well, your fairies are probably quite sad. So you got to deal with that. Gnomes. Beautiful, beautiful gnomes. Now, I may or may not be biased towards or against gnomes, as I crowned with gnomes in age 96 and age 88. This edition of gnomes doesn't really blow me out of the water. I don't think they're super duper strong or anything. 10% population. You can do a lot of things with that, right? If you just turn it into 3+3 pop, which is, you know, rounding, then, you know, an attacker that normally runs 12 offensive units per acre can run 15 instead. So you compare the numbers of running, you know, 15 of these elites versus 12 of someone else's elites. And usually Gnome comes up a little bit behind doing that, but they've got quick feet, they've got, you know, no real penalties, they've got a little bit of benefit from these credits that train thieves, and a little bit of massacre immunity. So I think Gnomes are sort of like an Avian. They're a fast, low offense attacker that's adaptable, but whereas Avian's quite adaptable in build space, Gnome's a lot more adaptable in where they put their population. What Gnome can do better than other people is not pushing their offense, it's pushing higher defense, it's pushing higher thieves and wizards, it's pumping very strong off of only specs, whereas other people are really pumping a lot of their prep time into elites. Gnomes can focus on pushing universities, pushing, what are those buildings that make wizards? Guilds. And also, if you don't have a war with Gnome and you're sort of trading hits, you're not really missing out. You're not risking those really valuable elites that other races are. So Gnomes really thrive out of war. Gnomes really thrive when they grow and when they're expanding their population outside of their offense. And then when they do just sort of, you know, run a bunch of offense, they're not too bad, right? They're a little bit fast. They've got a fairly modest offense. They're good at everything. They don't really excel at the normal things, but I think you can make gnome work in almost any role, including hard attacker, hybrid, TM, but I don't think I'd run them as pure TM. That's really not what their kit is meant to do this age, so there's that. Go to Halfling. Halfling bonus is the opposite of that fairy bonus. They've got a +5 home capacity. This means every 10% homes they're running gives them about 2% extra population. So if you're running 30% homes plus 6% population, while having an 11 elite instead of a 10 D-spec means you've got pretty good offense numbers, or defense, sorry. So I think their defense is going to be on par with Elf and Fairy. I think there's situations where you can push them to being higher than Elf and Fairy. We'll see. I think they're a little bit easier to manage overall as well. Their elite's not too expensive. Running D-specs on them isn't as much as a penalty as it is for Fairy. And then their other bonus, minus thief cost. This means that you can run them minus thief cost and plus cunning science, which is the thief damage science. They've also got invisibility. So what I see from this kit is a thief that runs sort of like even a rogue that runs more like a heretic. They don't run 7, 8, 9 TPA. They run like 5 or 6 TPA. They focus on really hollowing out the enemy core with plus damage. And then if you get into a stalemate against the enemy TMs, then that's where you can pump your thieves up to break them. And it's not very expensive. Access to Chastity, which is just a really nice utility damage spell. They've got built-in Divine Shield, so there's much... When they're building a lot of homes, so they're going to have high birth rate, and they've got minus damage against enemy casters, means they're very difficult to fireball and keep low on wizards or peasants. And invisibility is probably the best thief spell in the game. Plus 10% TPA, minus 20% thief losses, means that even if you don't have those maxed out thieves' dens, you have really good sustain. Another thing for Halfling, which isn't usually true, is now that they have a defensive elite, you can hybrid those Halflings early age and build up that elite count. And you only need to switch into pure defense when it fits you. So I think that's a change to Halfling that most people haven't really thought about yet, but is actually really impactful, is that ability to run as a hybrid for a lot longer. You gain more honor when you win as a hybrid because you're taking in attacks. And with invisibility, they can live with diluting their thieves' dens with worth building efficiency and still really maintain that damage output without just slaughtering their own thieves. So I think Halfling is quite different than what people are used to. They're running more of a sort of hybrid-y style now. And then once they're totally pumped up, they've just got that damage output late age with the cunning science with high defense, high homes. And that's how you do it. I think of the TMs overall, I'm leaning pretty heavily towards Fairy because of that late age scaling they can do. But that's just me. Look at Human. Human is like the new weird Orc. Their elite cost barely went up. Their elite net worth went down quite a bit. This is supposed to be one of the big benefits to playing Human, is keeping that low net worth. They also gained +1 offense on their elite. So they've got a bit of income, a bit of science from Fountain of Knowledge, a bit of minus losses from Salvation. So they've got 3 small sort of quality of life changes. They've got the +1 horse, which is good for their elite or their O-spec. So it's a medium offense option that has a lot of quality of life minor buffs to it, and they're quite adaptable. They can sort of pick the style they want to play. You know, we'll see how that turns out. But then they have these new gains, 20% combat gains. It's not a bonus we've ever seen on human, I don't think, and it changes them up quite a bit. They're that medium offense option, but now they're hitting you a lot harder. If you can break a TM, it's really significant, those sort of land gains. They're chaining people harder. They've got a lot more, like, blowout power to them. So, I don't know what to think. I think this is quite a lot stronger than last Age's human. You've got more offense and 20% gains, and all you really lost for it was some income. But when you compare the relative amount of elite cost everyone else is dealing with, it's not that bad. You even got that salvation in there. So I think human's going to be one of those sleeper picks that most people ignore, but I think is actually really strong. Even that low net worth is kind of huge. So I think human's fantastic. It has sort of a different role than you traditionally think, so you sort of have to figure out how's that going to work for me. And I think once you have it, yeah, excellent pick. I absolutely love what Schrodes did with human this age on the changes, so very happy. Orc! Orc lost those combat gains, gave them right over to human, and instead they've got those built-in casualties. So now we are looking at an orc that sort of different than what we're used to, sort of the same. It's still got that stacking bloodlust plus kills potential going on. Not extremely high offense, but still in the high offense category. Not the most expensive elite either, but they do have to contend with a bit more net worth compared to something like human. That offense is really coming from bloodlust rather than the elite itself. And this pick is a lot more about leveraging those kill ratios. You want to run, stalwart and hospitals and, lose a lot less while killing a lot more, or you just run extra TGs, you hit people with onslaught, and you stack the kills that way. Both styles work, I think. Problem is, it doesn't really do anything else, right? It's not fast, it's not hitting you extra hard, there's no real economic benefits, and it's scaling quite a bit worse into the late game. Late game, you're missing, 2% population, 3% income and build efficiency, minus 4 or 5% offense from science. Not the end of the world, but it does add up. Though, when you compare it to honor bonuses, I think these actually do end up being pretty equivalent when you're looking at that sort of Baron to Viscount range. If you're just a permanent peasant lord, this is probably worse for you, the minus 10% science effectiveness. But there's ways around it, right? End of the day, you can replace this with like 6 or 7% libraries and pretend it doesn't exist. So really, they have a 6 or 7% building efficiency nerf. Not terrible, right? Pretty bad, but it's not terrible. How do you play Orc? I don't know. It's a weird way to live this age. I like the idea of running, sort of a tankier Orc that leverages kills and sustainability and attrition. But that's sort of hard to do without an economic benefit. So I think Orc's in a weird spot. I thought I had good ideas for them, but I'm sort of coming up a little dry now. I think the Elite's just a little bit too hard to get. You're going to lose too many of them, and you're not going to be able to push up those wizards or science very well. So I think early age, they're going to be quite strong just because you can, on similar numbers, you can leverage those kills really well. But I think later on, you're just going to fall behind dryads and undeads and humans and stuff. This training cost, it does help this a little bit, so maybe it's okay. I'd say Orc is going to be largely ignored, but it's probably better than people think. But I don't know if you're really breaking people with it the same way. I don't know. Losing 20% gains is pretty huge. There are ways to use that to your advantage. In a lot of ways, 20% gains bloats you really fast, and then people can take advantage of you that way. You get out of net worth range too quickly, all that sort of stuff. So it is a different style. It is better at some things, but you have to make it work. I think it can work. I think Bloodlust is always the best spell in the game, so if you have access to it, find a way to win with it. I'm pretty happy. I think Orc's in a good spot. I don't think a lot of people will pick it, which means I can probably pick it, because, that's my rule. Now to Undead. Poor, awful Undead. They really kicked this guy in the nuts. From revised and proposed, I mean, they're still strong. They're a lot better than last age anyways. Minus 33% military casualties. It used to be offensive only, now it's defensive, so this enables a lot more hybrid styles and tanky, turtley styles, because you can't shred through that defense as easily. No food, still have the plague, still have animate dead, all very standard undead things. It's a bit of free land space, it lets you chain people a lot harder, but if you're not multi-tapping people, it's harder to use that plague. You're also taxing their mana through Nature's Blessing and stuff like that. In an age of more ambushing, you can actually abuse Plague a lot more. You can ambush people to plague them and then open up hits, and that's not really based on their starting defense, so that's a good way to start out your chains. But plus 20% wages is brutal, man. It's really hard to pay that. You're permanently greeted. So you either have to maintain, 20% more peasants somehow, which is really hard when you have to put all of your money into buying 2,400 gold elites. There's no way to increase your converts this age, so you do need to really focus that economy to get those elites. So, my recommendation is just push a lot of bookkeeping science, push a lot of alchemy science. Don't ignore your economy. That's something that Undead usually was able to get away with, because you didn't need hospitals, you didn't need food, you don't have to push the production science. So usually they're spec-based as well, so you just sort of throw everything into your military. But now I think it's really important that you get those economic sciences for Undead. There's a few personalities that might help you with this. You can run Artisan to push elites and have a bit more economy that way. You can run Warrior and use the TG Armory effect to lower your wages. Both good options, but I think Undead is going to cause a lot of people to struggle, and normally Undead is that sort of go-to pick everyone does, because it's easy, and I don't think it's easy anymore. I think it's really, really hard. They also changed the no sabotage ops to minus 50% sabotage damage, because I guess they really hated the idea of people using the military casualties to run a tanky hybrid. So, now you can bribe people's generals, but there's no point in going rogue or heretic. Darn. I mean, there's no point in going heretic before either. It's really just stopping people from going undead rogue, which was like a classic sort of thing. I don't really understand it. So, oh well. Undead Mystic, you're going to keep your peasants a lot easier, so maybe that's one way you deal with your wages. You're not getting greeted, you're not getting fireballed. Something like that helps. But, yeah, Undead, I think, is going to be a big struggle this age. But you're in the same way that Orc has got crazy kill ratios, so does Undead. And Plague is always useful. It's basically like having a hidden 20% offense buff when you're chaining people. You can run Warrior, you can run Tactician, get 5 times hits in at a higher speed. Like, everything's pretty good there, so... I complain, but I still think they'll be successful. I just think that people that naturally pick Undead because they're easy are going to suffer a lot more than usual. So that's that. Now we get the personalities. Artisan is the same, but they got a 5% further increase to their building capacity. I didn't even realize we were going to do that. I thought we were just going to keep them exactly the same. Everyone knows Artisan. The minus building damage taken is really strong for people that tend to lose their defense, and you don't want to get raised out, and you don't want them to target you with thieves, you don't want them night striking you. This protection from Greater Arson is really strong against thieves and night strike, and raise protection is really nice for attackers in longer wars. Tree of Gold and Economic Science production, these two benefits are going to be worth a lot more this age than previous ages with all the expensive elites. I think something like Dryad and Undead Artisan are going to be stellar picks that peak really early in the age and don't necessarily fall off. I think picks like Dwarf and Human Artisan that usually suffer due to net worth from their elites are really strong now. Now you can push those elites without bloating in net worth. Very strong. Very standard stuff from Artisan. You're basically picking it for Tree of Gold and free build space and protection. And if you do that and you play it well, you'll be very strong. The main issue is they're not very net worth efficient. And there comes a stage of the age near the end where, sort of everyone has their elites anyways. But I think this is probably the best Artisan age we've ever had, so if you have ever been thinking about it, now's your chance. The Paladin is your only other attacker way of getting some economic books. Their minus casualties have been nerfed a lot. Normally we see them at minus 30%. This is minus 25%, but also had Salvation, which was like minus 33%. So a big nerf to Paladin. And as a support caster, they're a lot worse not being able to give Divine Shield and Illuminate Shadows to people anymore. But it does mean, personally as a Paladin, you're stronger, since you're the only one with access to those spells. So you're a lot tankier against ops relative to others, but you lose those military casualties. A little bit of quality of life having fanaticism. Others didn't have it before. We'll see how it goes. I think you just want 2 of them to get GP on your TMs and Fanat on your attackers, and that's fine. I don't think you want to pick them as your full core. I just don't think it's the age for it. But it's doable. Overall, it's supposed to be your support caster, and I think the goal is to have them be a little bit less, one of every race, cover everyone's spells, yada yada yada. So I think it's nice. Having a little less paladins is a bit more room in your setup for other things, so I'm happy. Heretic. Heretic gets a small science buff and a very, very big thief lost buff. So this makes them really, really sustainable. You don't even need very many thieves' dens at all to basically keep your thieves forever. But they're not scaling the way others are. They don't have revelation. So they need to get ahead other ways. They need more honor. They need to steamroll. They need more time pumping. And I think they might be able to do that. I think this buff to Thief Loss is extremely strong. You can just fail things and it doesn't matter. It's like I think when you sort of hit this threshold, it's very strong. So that's just me. Otherwise, there's no real change to them. So, I think Heretic is going to scale a little bit better. They're more defensive. You can run extra watchtowers. You skip the Thieves' Dens. You don't need super high Thief or Mage numbers. you're just trying to run the tankiest province you can that can still blow through enemy core and be sustainable. And I think it does that pretty well. So I like Heretic. I think there's a chance you see a bit more tanky, turtley progs as well. And you'll be able to use nightmares against them. However, with all the elite net worth changes, I could see nightmares being a little bit harder to manage than some ages, because you're going to drop enemy net worth as a percentage even more, and that's one of the harder things to manage about nightmare. So, doesn't scale as well, but is just objectively stronger. So, that's your pick for that. Mystic, almost identical. They no longer have 50% minus Wizard's Lost on failed spells. This isn't super significant, but it does matter in longer wars. It can be worth like almost a whole WPA over the course of a 4-day war. So they're a little bit less sustainable in war. They also lost Mind Focus, so they're not pumping as quickly either. That's 25% wizard production rate difference from last age. So 2 small minor kind of nerfs to mystics, but then they have access to Rev. And so they scale a lot better than they used to, but their ability to pump super duper fast is reduced, and they're going to have a little bit more pumping to do in general. But otherwise, it's a mystic. You pick them because you want Meteor Showers, and you want wizards, and you want mana. So they still do that, not a lot to say. The changes to Mystic are a lot more racially based than based on the personality. But now having Revelations on Mystics and Rogues further enhances the ability for random attackers to just pick a Mystic and get that science buff and scaling. So we'll see. We'll skip Raider for now, go to Rogue. Rogues essentially identical to last age, but they get that Revelations. They have minus Thief cost as well. I thought they were losing minus Thief cost. So, well, that's funny. Halfling Rogues have just hilariously cheap thieves. I think that might actually be something interesting. So now we've got Elf Mystics that can pump WPA in war, and Halfling Rogues that can pump TPA in war. So, some interesting things there. I think both of those picks could benefit from going a lot higher defense to start to really ensure that Unbreakable, and then sort of pad out their TPA, WPA numbers throughout the war. But Rogue's actually getting a buff to TDs and Rev. So unlike Mystics that got a little bit of a straight nerf. So, same old. Rogues are good. Now they've got more science. Again, it's mostly being balanced around their races, not their personalities. No big changes. Raider. Elites gain an offense and lose a defense. +1 horse strength. 10% free stables, and immunity to steal war horses. And they've got that science military production bonus. So, this is like a slightly different sort of warrior. It comes with a bit more utility in terms of build space and immunity to steal war horses. It's good on those sorts of races that sort of struggle to keep their stables, or don't want stables at all, like Dwarf. I can even see these being decent on Dryad, just because, you don't really want to mount your Dryad elites normally, but, being able to get these stables for free, these horses for free, lets you do it. I'd just watch out for that elite defense strength. I think Dryads and Orcs and Gnomes are 3 people that are really risking themselves with lowering that elite def. So 2 defense elite gets hit really hard, armies home, they get ambushed really easily, and it bleeds their offense. But This is significant offense increases and a bit of build space, and that Steel Warhorse production is worth a lot. It stops the enemy from just doing a small bit to you to like secure their own unbreakables. Now they have to commit to a full chain or full night strike run in order to take you down. Whereas, maybe you're a warrior and you're just about to break someone, but they just take half your horses and 4 ops, and now it's, that big swing. So, and you don't have to manage, like, the warrior, they've got the combo TG armory. You're going to have to manage that build space in war. You're going to be losing building efficiency. You're gaining land, losing land, getting raised. It's sort of a lot harder to manage, whereas the raider's very straightforward. You're automatically getting the buffs, and you aren't, there's no easy counter to your buff. So it's just sort of a straight offense utility pick. Very nice, very straightforward. I love the flavor. I think this is a good job. Stage is identical, but the minus 30% learns has been increased to minus 50% learns, and they also have immunity to the plague. Oh, and they have Mystic Aura, because why not? I don't think Sage is particularly good. I think Sage is especially poor if what you're doing with it is spreading out your science the exact same way and just having better science and more science. I think the best way to play Sage is to look at some specific science goals, like I want this much build efficiency because then I can do this, or I want, a bunch of minus build speed and cost so that I can swap my builds around a lot. Because the way a science efficiency buff works is that it's more impactful on big blocks of science rather than spread out science. And you can stack this with libs and extra books in one big block and really push the numbers on a specific category. And that's your sort of goal as Sage. So you need to have sort of a plan for your science in order to make your Sage effective. And I don't think many people have a good idea of like a big science goal that makes them stronger, because it's just sort of hard to make happen. I don't know. Very common on Sage, you just see really high pushed population, and then they sort of bloat net worth, and they have that same problems that Artisan has, where they're not very net worth efficient. But a little bit of quality of life, book sustain. I don't think Sage is outright weak. I just don't think they're doing a lot without a plan. If you have a plan, then you're going to do good. That's true for all of Utopia. If you have a plan, you're probably winning. If you don't have a plan, well, hope you're just really good. So, yeah, I don't know. Sage is fine. Has that usual problem where it's weak, and then it's okay, and then it's strong, but if it's too strong, then nobody engages with you, and I don't know. Pretty boring, pretty normal. I think it's fine. Tactician is completely unchanged. This is by far the best core option against other core, because you're hitting them 25% more, and you're hitting them 15% faster. And people are failing a bunch of SOMs against you. That's it. The speed in general are super duper strong at hitting people more. And you want to hit people more? Great. If you want to hit people harder, you want to pick something like Warrior or Hero Raider that can break TMs, that can break more people that way. Tacticians are really about, synchronizing your speed with quick feet and winning that chain war with the extra general. And winning, just being able to blow out a lot of land, take a lot of honor, stuff like that. And I don't think they needed a buff. I think they did this. They fill their role exceptionally well. And so even as we see pretty much every other attacker personality like War Hero and Warrior get a buff, I still don't think Tactician's weak. I think Tactician is absolutely the strongest personality for taking out enemy core, very similar to how, Avian is really good at it, right? It's not the pick you have for breaking TMs, but you can combine this with a race with really high offense like Dryad and sort of have the best of both worlds. So I think Dryad Tact is probably the pick of the age. But, if they don't have elites, it's funny to be point and laugh at them. It's like, look at the Dryad with no elites. I rate this a T+. War Hero. I think War Hero's the personality that probably got buffed the most. Oh man, they lost so many things from Revised. They're actually... So, Dragon Slay Strength, nobody cares. So really they're trading Hero's Inspiration for 5% military efficiency. So, in a war where you are... In a war where you're struggling to pay wages, I don't think this war hero is any stronger. If you're in a war where you're paying wages just fine, now you've got an extra 5% military efficiency on top. Straight buff, 5%. Pretty good. HI is really good. It's a lot of minus wages. And on top of that, it's nice in a war ceasefire. You get that few days of extra training, sort of like I talked about with Dryad, just a couple extra ticks of training speed is worth a lot of economy. Those sort of honor bonuses stack up when it comes to pumping expensive elites. So I'd say overall this is a small buff, but based on the other changes, the elite cost change, I think this is a buff because it's the only sort of attacker personality that's helping you train more elites based on the honor and how that's helping your population and your income. And, in an age where there's a lot more offense in general on core, but not more defense on core, you're going to see core hitting each other a lot more. There's going to be less massacres, more trads, so you're going to be losing more honor. So having that honor retention is going to help. So I think War Hero has some potential this age. We'll see how it goes. You still need a lot of honor to make War Hero work. If you're not count, just pick Warrior. If you're not going to get count on your War Heroes, just pick Warrior, because you're just going to have more offense. But if you're going to win 3 or 4 wars, if you know how to leverage the minus honor loss by running sort of a suicide strat, targeting high honor enemies, getting chained very deep, going back up, getting chained deep, going back up. Every time you repeat that cycle, you gain permanent honor, essentially. Everyone else that gets chained to Peasant, you're getting chained to Baron, and then you're going up to Count, and they're chaining you down to Viscount. Then you're going up to Marquis, they're chaining you down to Viscount. You're going up to Marquis, and they're chaining you down to Count. You're going up to Duke. That's the endless cycle if you had unlimited wars. If you only have 5 or 6 wars, you probably won't break out of the scene. If you get 6 or 7 wars, and you're winning 6 of them, War Hero starts getting pretty good. It sort of scales like a Sage. Near the end of Age, they're the strongest. Early Age, you're not really getting anything special out of them. But I'd say for most people that don't have a plan to make the War Hero work, you're better off just picking a Warrior, because you always have the offense on Warrior. You don't always have offense from War Hero. But, don't discount how decent 5% military efficiency is, so that's nice. Warrior. They are losing 3% offense off the top. I don't really care too much about train time or prisoner strength or valor science, so I'll ignore all those. The big bonus this age is training grounds also act as armories. So this is fun. This is going to be a huge benefit out of war, a huge benefit for trading hits, a huge benefit for waving. because you're going to be able to replace those lost troops. You're going to maintain your wages out of war, meaning you're able to store extra gold for build swaps and dragon. It's like sweet. If you're running, a modest amount of training grounds, it's like a 30% wage decrease. You're drafting out of wars cheaper, all that sort of fun stuff. Training specs is easy. You don't need to swap them from end of war ceasefire from arms into TGs, all that sort of stuff. In war, slightly different story. Once your building efficiency falls, you're bloating, you're getting chained, all that sort of stuff. It's a lot harder to maintain these strong TGs. And that makes the armory benefit less useful. So, maybe if you're simming like the idea of having 20% TGs and, a good building efficiency and saying, yeah, that's how good warrior is. That's how good warrior is until you're 24 hours into war, and then probably half that bonus once you're at that point, because it's just not going to be the same. Now, some races can make better use of this than others. We saw Dark Elf has a big training ground benefit. Dwarf is tankier. They're keeping their buildings in. Their buildings are stronger. They're going to get better benefit out of this. Something like a Gnome, I think, is going to work really well with Warrior because they're pretty much spec-based already. Undead, they have wage problems. They really want to look into these armories. So a lot of races are looking pretty longingly at Warrior. Even Avian, they just have a lot of build space, so they can really overload themselves on TGs if they want to. So, yeah. Overall, I love these changes. Huge shout out to Schrodes for doing them and working with the Age Council and getting everything nice and balanced. So that is my rant. Thank you for listening.